Welcome to Metal Priestesses Podcast. I am Elizabeth Galdamez.
And I am Jenny Shore.
Today on the show, we have Nancy Barile, award-winning teacher and author. Her book is #1 on Amazon. It is titled, I'm Not Holding Your Coat, My Bruises-and-All, a memoir of punk rock rebellion.
Also joining us is Nancy's longtime friend. We're thrilled to have him, vocalist and founding member of Southern California hardcore punk band T.S.O.L. Please welcome Jack Grisham.
Take it away, Wendy.
It develops. We urge you to stay tuned to radio and TV and to stay indoors at all costs.
As of 12 noon tomorrow, say goodbye to the world as you know it. Say goodbye to
Metal Priestesses.
Welcome to the show. Oh, she's putting on her mic.
Sorry, I forgot to put my headphones in. I can't hear anything.
Good.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Hi. Hi, Nance.
Hi, Elizabeth.
We've got Alejandra over in Detroit.
Hi, Alejandra.
And hello. Jen and Jesse are in LA.
Hi, guys.
And I'm in Chicago.
Oh, my goodness.
And you're in, are you still in Boston?
Outside of Boston, yep.
Oh, wow.
That's my hair left.
I loved your book. I didn't want your book to stop.
No, I love you. Thank you.
I enjoyed it so much. And I love, I think Ian MacKaye at the beginning wrote something so beautiful and honest about how important fans are and how they make the scene so important. And that was so great.
And you know, he is such an incredibly perceptive guy that he knew exactly, I was looking for some way to frame this, like, why am I still talking about this 38 years later, and boom, he just did it without even I don't know. He's just so spontaneous and brilliant. I'm a huge admirer.
He is brilliant. Yeah.
And just a huge,
I know, and you got to see them. Yeah, so
yes,
lucky.
many times. Yeah. I saw them quite a few times. Yeah, they were great. So
Nancy, I feel like we sort of led parallel lives. I was going to the same shows you were going to, but I was in LA and
yes, but you were doing so much more because you were on stage, like that to me.
Oh, Jack's here.
Yeah. And then did your own store and everything. I can't, Hi,
Jack.
He's like, what am I doing here?
Jack.
Yeah.
Was a bunch of women.
Yeah, I know. I actually like being the token man in the room.
Yeah. The estrogen level's way high in here.
How about I'll just keep my little mouth shut and just sit by.
No, I was telling everybody that my introduction to T.S.O.L. was when I saw Suburbia.
Oh, yeah.
And you scared me a little bit, but then I think that's what made me punk. I was like, all right, I got to know more.
Elizabeth, can you introduce all of us? Well, Jack, yes. I met you because we were in a book together called Crime and Punishment, and there was the reading at the book Soup. So I met you then.
Yep.
So my name's Jenny.
Jesse Jesse's in a band with Jenny.
Hi, Jesse.
Backstage Pass.
Hi.
Then I have Alejandra. She's in Detroit. She owns a record label.
Hi,
I am Elizabeth. I'm in Chicago. And you might know Nancy.
Nancy and Jack, how did you two meet?
I'll take that. His band played Love Hall in Philadelphia. And, like every other woman there, I was like, I'm in love. This guy is like devastatingly handsome, like personality, unbelievable. And we just, we hung out that night, just walking the mean streets of Philadelphia and drinking Ortlieb's beer. I don't know that you were drinking as much as I was that night, but you know, and we just, I don't know, we just stayed friends for 40 years. You've always been really, yeah. You always been really kind to me, always remembers me when I'm like, hey, you know, put me on the list for that show because it's sold out. And, you know, he always takes care of me. And, you know, Al and I have seen them and saw Joy Killer in Vegas and in Boston. And then I guess the most recent time I saw you was not that many years ago, maybe 5 in Boston when you opened for The Damned.
Right.
Huge fun, you know,
And that place,
Good show.
That's crazy. That place that we saw each other in Las Vegas, the roof caved in after that. Did you know that?
I did know that. Yeah. So that was insane. Yeah. That was a great show, boy. We had
and if I can just say, I like that Al's been like coming out of his shell.
Coming out of his shell isn't.
Well, whatever you want to say. I like the post about his mother. I like that.
So, you know, so Nancy, Al is your husband.
Is my husband, yeah.
He was in the band SSD like that you managed. He was in the band.
She did not manage. Yeah.
I managed SSD for a while, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And, you know, co-managed, I would say, because Al's a control freak, you know. So
but I love his mother post because my mother was like that. I was telling him, you know, I was on tour and I came back and she had literally sewn sequins on the collars of all my shirts. Like when I got home, I'm like, what the fuck, man? They're just sequins. And she goes, you're not flashy enough on stage.
Oh, there you go. That's awesome.
So rough.
She wanted you to be Gary Glitter.
Oh my God.
A bit of a stage mom because my kid's in a band too. So I'm guilty.
Yeah, stylist. So,
and then I remember so we used to have Zed Records. It was by us here. Zed Records was like our record store. And so Mike Zampelli calls me one day. He goes, hey, you better get down here. Your mom's doing a fucking in-store. I'm like, and because I'd never give her anything. I'd say, you don't need to hear it now. Yeah, you don't need to listen to that stuff. You don't need. So she found out where Zed was and she drove down there and went in the store and said, give me everything my son's on. I want to see it. And then kids in the store start saying, whose mom are you? And then my mom's like signing stuff and telling stories.
That's beyond stage mom.
Oh my God. So right.
Now, Nancy, we were saying that we had kind of parallel lives in some ways. We were seeing some of the same shows, like The Damned and the Ramones and all that kind of stuff in like what, 76?
Yeah.
77?
Yeah, 76, 77, yeah.
And that's, how did you get turned on to punk?
So I had some older gay friends who I grew up in the suburbs, and they were really in touch with what was happening, you know, in the city, culturally, artistically, musically, and they liked me and sort of took me under their wing and introduced me to like bands like the New York Dolls and Iggy Pop, and you know, I think it was after I saw. I'm sorry.
Rest in peace, Sil.
Yep. And so after I saw like Iggy Pop with, because I was a huge Bowie fan, and I went to see Iggy Pop because Bowie was playing keyboards for him, and I like loved Iggy. And then, you know, it was just Patti Smith, Blondie, like I just was all in after that.
Yeah. You know, when I was still in high school, my friend Robin was dating Iggy Pop, and he came to my house in the Valley and he stole a bunch of my clothes. And then I remember there was the LA Trash Dance. It was, I'm sure Jesse went to it. It was did Iggy even play that night? It was the New York Dolls and Solar X, which was the weirdest band on the planet.
Oh yeah, I went to high school with them.
Yeah, so weird. But yeah. When I saw the New York Dolls album in the in-store of Licorice Pizza, I just thought, what the heck? You know, I was so like, my eyes were like saucers.
Did you get to see T.S.O.L?
Me?
Yeah, you.
You know, by the time I had backstage, you know, I was in Backstage Pass for 76, 77, 78. And then I started Straight Jacket, which was a clothing store. And so I was dressing bands, but I didn't get into hardcore punk as much at the time. I sort of I was sort of in the Elvis Costello, Nick Lowe camp at that point. But I do have a T.S.O.L t-shirt.
And I love that, Elvis Costello, when he did Hollywood High.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know, he also did Millikan High School in Long Beach at the same time. So
wow.
That was the high school I went to. So I went to that show, and it was Mink DeVille, Nick Lowe,
I love them.
Costello for, $5. And it was great. It was great. It was, loved it.
Yeah.
And a lot
Hollywood.
of people, he did both schools on that.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Nancy, I gotta congratulate you because your book is like #1 on all the punk books. Can you?
There's nobody that's more surprised by that than me.
It's so incredible.
Some friends, some family, I would get it off my chest and I could say, check the box, I wrote a book, I just never expected, the first printing to sell out in a week. I didn't,
It's amazing.
I love all the posts of of people holding the book up and all that.
So heartwarming to me,
I gotta agree with Jack that my favorite posts are about your husband.
Yeah.
Because you just make fun of him all the time, and that's what husbands are for.
Yeah, he's like, I'm so glad that you're having, so many laughs at my expense. I'm like, well, you give me a lot of material, dude, he's just, my husband is, I'm a teacher. My husband, he's never been diagnosed, but as an educator and somebody with a degree in behavioral science, I would say he is, textbook Asperger's syndrome, which is high function. I mean, he is, and it's not, it's just who he is. He gets very single-minded about things, and he's got
hyper focus.
No social.
Jack, you wouldn't know anything about that, would you?
No, see, Jack, he's got his, but he just doesn't have a filter, and he just, my parents had a real hard time with Al at first because he just says exactly what he's thinking, and we're not used,
right.
People weren't used to that kind of thing.
No filter.
Yeah.
Well, I'm an occupational therapist also. I'm an occupational therapist also. So I worked with a lot of kids on the spectrum.
Yeah, and I've worked as a psychotherapist, so I'm going to diagnose you all before.
By the end of the time. So, but it's great. Exactly. My mother used to say, I love Al. You know exactly where you stand with him. Like my mother used to like to come up and visit. And Al worshiped my mother. He loved my mother. And she said, if I said, like, do you care if I stay another week? And if he said no, she knew he meant it. There was there's no bullshit about Al. Otherwise he would say, like, no, go home.
Nancy, could you talk about your teaching career? You're like a very celebrated teacher.
Yeah, that's another thing. Nobody more surprised than me. But I just and I said this, I've written articles about it for education, that punk rock really made me a better teacher because it enabled me to connect with alienated and marginalized teens. I don't look anything like my students, especially now, 61-year-old white woman, 80% of my students are of color, but, I still remember what it was like to feel, other. Even though I led a very privileged life, don't get me wrong. And I'm not saying that I'm, have anything of the trials and tribulations that my students of color have to go through. But just that little experience of feeling that way enabled me to connect with my students. And it's, punk rock taught me that whole do it yourself. I work in a low income area. My district doesn't have a lot of money. If I want to do field trips or get supplies or books or resources, I have to fundraise myself. So like, I'm right on that, because of punk rock, and it also taught me the power of the written word and oral communication, because back then, we had to write letters and you had to call on the phone, but like it was so expensive. You had to be able to be succinct and cohesive in what you needed to say because you didn't have a lot of time. And so, that was punk rock and it made me a social activist as well. And so that's something that my students, really, I think, are appreciative of.
Alejandra is a big social activist, and her twin, they do a lot of fundraising. Alejandra, can you tell Nancy a little bit about that?
Sure. I feel like maybe you're giving me like a little bit more
No.
than I deserve. So, I mean, I have a twin sister, and we kind of just had a radical upbringing. My mom is very, very communist, and my grandfather and great grandfather were also very communist.
So was my mother.
Yeah. So intergenerationally, there's just like a lot of advocacy for labor rights, things of that nature. But most of the work that I do is centered around literacy. So I teach adult literacy, and I also read and write Latin and Greek. And so I just incorporate a lot of that into my literacy curriculum. And my twin sister Zoe has an organization called Ho Army, and she essentially she organizes a big group of hoes, and they pose in bikinis and lingerie, and they do car washes, and they use the funds that they generate to support either, farm workers, sex workers, people who are essentially like disenfranchised. And so that's what Zoe does.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I know. Makes me think I need to do a little bit more with my life.
Well, she's always taking more bikini models if you want to twin.
Yeah, maybe not.
My mom used to say,
will do it.
Yeah. My mom used to say, your whole generation is illiterate.
We had Vivian Goldman on last week, and she was talking about sort of the differences between British and American punk, and the sort of general rule a lot of people say is one was political, one wasn't, but that's not really true, is it, Jack? You were pretty political back in the day. I don't know if you still are. Do you feel that difference?
I'm listening. I was just yes. Go on. I mean, you were making a point. I was listening.
Yeah. So, but you were pretty political. I mean, you called yourself an anarchist, and do you feel that that's not really true? I mean, both of you, because you've both written about it. Written about those periods. You're pretty political people. You're still right.
I don't even know anymore. I honestly, I don't. My mind disappeared for a second because you were on the illiteracy thing, because I had this discussion with somebody the other day. I write books for people that don't read. That's what I mean, I have guys coming up to me saying, this is the only book I've ever read. I'm like,
short attention span theater.
When are you going to write another one?
You have an obligation to do that now.
But I'm saying, I don't think, I don't know if Nancy has that as much. I got, a bunch of Neanderthals just basically picking up a book,
Jack, what are you doing during this pandemic? What have you been doing?
Me?
Yes.
I'm fucking loving it. I am loving it. I'm not loving people in trouble, with the love and all that. I don't like that. But I'm an isolationist. I have a great time all by myself. I got my girl and I, so we got an office, and I write, and my girl's working on a master's at USC. So she sees clients. So the two of us, we're like just having a blast, nobody's coming around. It's quiet. And, and then I've been working on some films. I did a film about, the first film I did was about, sexual abuse, which was very well received, you can imagine, and it was a little rough. So, and then I just started on another film, and I just wrote another book. So, I like being home. I'm
busy at home.
Yeah, I'm 59 years old, and I still travel in a van when we tour. So it's just.
So it's funny that you say that, because I have a lot of friends in punk and metal bands. They've been saying the same thing. They're like, it's really nice being home. They don't want to start again.
Oh, we played 90 something shows the year before this. I mean, I was on tour. So every 3 days I'm playing a show, or whatever, about 4 days, whatever it is. But, and it's just, I was on the middle of tour when this whole thing happened. It's like, and the shows just started getting poorly attended. Just, except when we get down here. I live in a place where, well, it doesn't matter. You can look up Huntington Beach sometime. You want to see where I live.
I know Huntington Beach.
Oh, it's frightening. And I used to be one of the ones that they were afraid of. And now it's, for the same attitude that I had then, I get shit for now. Somebody was saying, well, what's the difference now between, punk rock now and punk rock then? I said, well, you know what? I never had a kid write me a letter saying I was a commie bastard for telling Reagan he can eat shit. No one's ever said that. But these days, it's like, I would get phone calls and, what are you doing playing this anti-Trump rally? What kind of bullshit's this? It's like, fuck. Anyway, I don't want to get into all that, but,
Well, that brings up a good question for most of you. Like, what is it like being an aging punk? Like, I'm on my way there, so give me some advice.
God, I feel old now.
Well, I pass the torch to my kid who is in a band and an amazing guitarist. So yeah, Eden's an incredible guitarist. And I tried not to be too much of a stage mom. Otherwise I'm banned, so I don't know. I miss going to shows. I miss kind of being out there. I miss playing. I miss rehearsing. I miss all that stuff. Nancy, do you still go to shows?
No, I only go, I usually only go to shows if a band like Jack's band comes through, or, somebody like, if Patti Smith comes through, or somebody that I really loved. I haven't seen any like new bands in
That's another thing. Like, I don't listen to new bands.
No.
Like, I mean, once in a while I do, and I do when I'm researching for my blog, but other than that, I just kind of want to turn back the classics when I'm hanging out.
Did you ever think you'd be called a classic, Jack?
I thinking about because I have kids, so my kids are into it, and like around here, like not on a big scale, but around here they like me around here. So so the kids go to school and their teachers ask them for T-shirts. You know what I'm saying? It's like, hey, can you bring us one of your dad's shirts? So there's like a cool thing or whatever. But for me, being a dad, it was real trippy. Like my daughter was one of my daughters a vegan. Well, they're both vegans, but they're like total peace punk. Recycling, getting set up in the yard. I remember I come out one time and here's all these hippies in the yard. I'm like, God damn it, I got a job. Get that recycling the fuck out of here. Just, I sounded like my dad. It's like, oh my God. I'm.
So Eden came over to do their laundry, and I was looking at my phone, and it's like, Mom, like, you're looking at your phone. I thought, God, times have changed. It's like role reversal. I
got into it with the police one day over something. It's because my kids will go, oh, don't tell my dad, whatever, in case I overreact. And so I'm driving down the street, and my ex-wife, who I'm still good friends with, I'm friends with them all. And anyway, so I got the kids in the car, and my daughter's like 14 at the time. And then I got my other daughter who's like 2 in the car, and they're in the car, and I'm checking out the surf, and I know their mom's going to give me shit for being late. And I get red lighted, and I'm about 1.5 miles, 2 miles away from my house. And I just figure, well, fuck, I'm not going to stop, man. I'm just going to get the kids home, and then I'll deal with it then. And so my kid is sitting in the car, and she's got anarchy written on her shirt, her head shaved, and she's like 14, right? And so the cops come behind us, and he lights us up, and I just ignore it. I ignore it. And my daughter goes, hey, the cops are behind you. The cops are behind us. And I go, yeah, fuck him. And my kid just gets this look on her face where it's like, oh my God, that A on my jacket is made of cloth, and my father is the real thing. This is terrifying. And Anyway, so every once in a while, I got to give them a taste. I got to give them a taste.
Nancy, how did you get into hardcore punk? How did that evolve?
It just kind of became like a natural progression. I was managing a punk band, and then we
Which
would do
one was that?
we were doing all ages shows and stuff. And then I saw Black Flag, I saw T.S.O.L, I saw Dead Kennedys, and I was like, oh, I like this offshoot. I liked it because it was physical, it was angry, it was fast, it was loud. And that just appealed to me as, a suburban Catholic schoolgirl whose dad was a Marine, So
Right.
You needed that.
Yeah, I really did.
Were you going to CBGB a lot?
Yeah, I was going to CBGB's a lot. I was going to Irving Plaza, all the, New York places, because it's only an hour and a half from Philly, but Philly had a really big scene, and all the bands passed through Philly, so that was really good. And so, it was just so fun. And it was one time in my life where I can say I was 100% present for everything. And I knew I was experiencing something special at the time. And I just enjoyed it. I've never, it really made me feel it was dangerous and I was getting hurt all the time, but it was fun. It was really, really fun.
Was there a really good thrift shopping scene in Philadelphia?
There always was a really good, vintage thrift shops, things like that. Yeah. And we made most of our own clothes, we were not stylists like you, by any stretch. Like every time I see something on Facebook where somebody that I know from the early 80s is like, so-and-so has tagged you in a post, I'm like, oh God, I'm so scared to see.
I wish you could have been to Straight Jacket.
Yeah, what am I going to be wearing in this photo? I'm terrified, so I'm like, you know what? I don't make any excuses for, my Nikes and leather pants. And
I love the fact you worked for a lawyer.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah, those days you just needed a good leather jacket, that was like the sort of
and
routine.
A good lawyer.
Yeah. The lawyers were really great. I was really good at my job, so they respected that, but I remember when I wanted a leather jacket, they didn't have what I wanted. So I found this old leather maker in North Philly, it was really old. And I was like, I saved for weeks and weeks because I used to do a lot of overtime, and I was like, I want a jacket that looks like this, and there's photos of that jacket in the book, and then I sold it because I wanted to move to Boston. I didn't have enough money to make that move without, and I really wish I didn't, because it was really, I was like, wow, look at me, going at
when I had a really cool leather jacket too. I think it was a Shots leather jacket, and I went on tour. I was on tour with, at that point, Linda Ronstadt, and I came home and I lived in West Hollywood. It was my apartment was really cool, but it was $340 a month. And someone broke in and they stole my leather jacket, of course. And
you sure it wasn't Iggy Pop?
No, it wasn't. And I remember I was I put on this pair of jeans. I was like, God, I lost weight. And then I realized he stole my leather jeans and left his. And I was like, oh my God.
Well, that was the problem with the leather pants. When you wore them, after a couple of days, you'd have to take them to get the knees, sucked back in and stuff. They stretched out.
Well, I think Philly has a pretty good scene still.
Yeah,
a lot of the record labels, in fact, have moved out there now. So, I think that's pretty cool. But
it's a great place. I'm trying to talk Al into moving back after I retire. I don't know if I'll be able. He always used to say, I can't leave my sports teams. But maybe.
Oh, I think you've done your time in Boston.
I think I have too, and it's so cheap to live in Philly. It's really expensive to live in Boston.
Yes.
And we live right on the ocean, and I'm, it's cold, and it's, I'm afraid our house with global warming, it's gonna, end up being in the water one of these days. So, I'm ready to go home. I want to go home.
Absolutely.
What does Al do?
He was a mechanical engineer, but he went out on disability because he has a really bad back. So, he's one of these guys that probably would have worked until the grave, and he really loved his job. He tested jet engines for General Electric and he loved it.
Oh, wow.
But they sort of, they were kind of mean to him and forced him out when his back, got bad. So, but yeah, I'm hoping I can get him down there, because you get a lot more bang for your buck down in Philadelphia than you do up here. So.
How long have you been teaching for?
27 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's great.
And, punk rock, it was great. It kind of made me fearless, when you have, Elizabeth, you read the book, like I had bombs thrown at me and stuff, So my first years of teaching, I was doing a lot of work with Cambodian gangs, and it was really bad, and, they would, they try to scare you a little bit, and I'd be like, I had bombs thrown at me, like, don't, and so it made me not afraid to go into the neighborhoods, talk to the kids, and and to work with them and try to help them get what they needed to be successful in life. And so I'm really grateful to punk rock.
I worked with a lot of kids also that you did in the early part of my career as an occupational therapist, until I had one little kid. I had scissors and he headbucked me, and I thought, okay, I think it's time to move on.
That wouldn't have scared Nancy.
I remember when
it really hurt.
I used to, the kids had nowhere to go sometimes. So we used to like hang out in my room after school, and I'd like teach them how to play Scrabble and like Yahtzee and Uno and stuff. And I remember one time I had like one of those plastic rulers, and we were playing a game sitting around, and I was like flicking this ruler back and forth, and I smacked like the head gang, the OG member, right across the eyes. I was like, oh no, like what's gonna happen, Yeah, and, he took it well.
When this kid headbucked me, teacher Cindy said, "You're supposed to wear a pillow in between the two of you," and I was like, "Oh, I didn't know. I didn't get the memo."
That's right.
So, Jack, do you miss playing? Do you miss playing at all?
He doesn't. He wants.
You said you were happy, but come on.
Look, and I'm just calmly sitting here listening to you guys, enjoying this. I don't miss it.
I know. I have guitars in the other room. They're like, "What are you going to play me?" I'm like, probably never. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't miss playing. I just started. We start filming February 1st. I just started directing a movie, and just I like being by myself. That's why I like writing. I was going to ask Nancy that. Like writing, there's nobody else to deal with. I don't got it. Nobody's bitching about anything. You're just all by yourself. It's wonderful.
When you're writing about those days, either one of you, do you get sort of like back into the spirit a bit, and you start like knock the computer over, or write in blood or something, anything like that, or does it bring you back?
When my autobiography or whatever, An American Demon, when I wrote that, I was living in an office building like illegally, and I had to push everyone away. And I was actually, at the time, I had a spiritual advisor that was a Jesuit brother, and I was visiting him once a week, and I'm not Catholic. This was just somebody I wanted to talk to. I was learning anyway. So I'd go visit with this guy once a week. So I had to cut him off. I cut everyone off, and then I had to go back. And I wonder if Nancy had so I got to go back and relive this stuff. Like, what is it? I haven't had a drink in over 32 years. So, what does it taste like? What does this taste like again? When you hit somebody in the face, how much does their skin give before you hit teeth? What is this? What is it? What's the jail smell like? And to get that smell in your nose, and even if after you showered, you can't get it off. And also, like as Nancy referred to earlier, getting a little taste of what it's like to be persecuted no matter where you go. You can't walk into the grocery store without getting in a fight. The cops hate you. Everybody's hates you. When you're arrested and you go to jail, you're a faggot. You're and you're getting into it with those guys. So it's just constant that. So So when I wrote, I had to go back into that. And my family actually did an intervention on me. They had said, hey, you've lost it. You're gone. You got to move in with your daughter. You're not well.
Wow.
You're not, because I was writing at the time, I was writing 18 hours a day and just locked in. And they got together, my friends, my daughter, and they said, hey, we're going to move you out of this office. No, just let me finish. I'm fucking crying. just trust me, please.
You're lucky you only had to go to your daughter's or whatever.
Wow. Yeah, but
you could have gone to the nut house.
Yeah, but and they left me in there, but that's no pleasure. My eldest daughter at 16 years old, her first tattoo was neck to ass, shoulder to shoulder, a large iron cross on her back. When she
Holy shit!
So,
Man.
and right now she's out at sea. She's an officer on a oil tanker. So,
Wow.
going to, I mean, she'll be captain within a year. She's going to be a captain. And
Wow.
so, dealing with her isn't, it's pretty gnarly. I get lectures these days about growing up, behaving myself and, whatever. So anyway, that, whatever. But I'd like to ask Nancy that. I mean, Nancy, when you're reliving this stuff and having to look back, how's it feel?
I mean, for me, it was a blast. Now, I work 3 jobs and, do most of the things in my house. So I was like, I had to write it fast, And so I also was really concerned about being as accurate as I could be, because I had, when people started asking me questions about shows, like I would just say what I remembered. I wasn't always accurate. So I felt I owed my Philly brethren and, accuracy. So that was my real main concern. But I kind of wrote it really quickly because I work too much and I have to, I don't have a lot of time. But, I just was reading an article about nostalgia and how people used to think nostalgia was bad for you, but psychologically it's really powerful for you. And it brings back, wonderful feelings of, and as I was writing it, you really relive those moments. And, besides having being in riots and getting punched in the face or, having a bomb thrown at you, most of it is really happy memories of growing up in a really fun way. So, it was really fun to write,
Yeah,
I love that it's written from, sorry. I love that it's written from a female perspective too, that you were, I mean, I always thought punk had a lot of women in it.
It did.
Yeah, but you don't hear their voice as much, I think. So it was really nice to read that. And
well, that was one of the main reasons that I did it, because I would be in these, Facebook groups on, hardcore punk or whatever. And I on the anniversary dates of shows, I would post stories, and some dude born in 1985 would be like, well, no, that didn't actually happen like that. And I'd be like, fuck you, I was there, I lived it. And they would do it to me all the time.
Always.
One guy said to me, you couldn't have been at all the shows you were at because there were no girls at shows, and, basically calling me a liar, when I told the story just recently about the Buff Hall show where, the Ghetto Riders saved our asses.
Yes.
Some guy Googled something off of onepercenters.com and sent it, and was like, you're wrong about that gang, they're this or that. I was like, shut up, it's so the mansplaining is so infuriating.
Yes.
That really fueled me to write this book, because I was like, I wasn't on stage and I had, very tiny role.
But you had a huge part. You
Well,
did though.
I was I always say I was kind of like the Forrest Gump of hardcore. I just kind of was in the right place at the right time for a lot of really epic shows. And I have a good memory. So
well, that's good.
Yeah. So that's, it was important for me to, to get it out there. And so now if the next time some dude, I'd be like, what, kind of wrote the book on this.
Right.
Nancy, could you tell us a little bit about Hilly Crystal and about your time at CBGB's and
You stalked him quite a bit, didn't you?
I mean, for Hilly was like, we had, I was managing a band, tiny, a band that didn't have like a huge following. We had one single, and I would call it, Hilly on the phone and be like, can you give us a show? And he'd be like, call me at 4 o'clock, and I call him at 4 o'clock. And then he'd say, call me tomorrow morning. And I call him tomorrow morning, and I was just so relentless. I think he's just said like, I'm giving this woman a show because I can't take any more phone calls from her, so he, then once we played once there, and we did pretty well, then, he would give us a show whenever we went, but, you had to play like a Monday night or something.
Right.
And so we went up there and, it was great. And that's where I met a lot of really cool people like John Watson and Jimmy G and Chris Taruki and, people that are still my friends today. That's another thing, about punk rock. So I am friends with everything, like anyone that's still alive, we're still friends, I had, Chris Taruki went on to manage, the Grateful Dead, be a stage manager for the Grateful Dead. And I worked with this woman who, her and her husband were like huge Dead fans. And I was like, well, I know the stage manager. And she's like, no, you don't. And I was like, did I ever shit talk you before? And she was like, no. And I was like, you want to meet him? And so when he came through town, I hadn't seen Chris in 38 years, but he immediately was like, yeah, meet me downstairs at the bar, and we hooked them up with tickets. And he sat in the hotel bar, like, telling stories about the Dead. They were just like, oh my God, and it was so wonderful that he did that. And almost a month to the day he died. And I was so incredibly happy that we got to reconnect, one more time on this planet before, that happened.
We used to just go to sound checks all the time and say, can you put us on the list? They were like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, you were pretty sneaky, Jen.
We just go to the whiskey, go to sound checks. Yeah.
So Jack, when you're writing, does now when you're writing or I suppose even directing or something like that, does that demon revisit you or?
Not, it depends on who you talk to, I guess. You know what I mean? You talk to some of my friends, they'd probably say he hasn't gotten any better. It hasn't changed. Not so much anymore. But I don't know. I'm thinking of CBGBs. Yeah, you got to know I'm a conversation behind you guys. I'm listening. I'm running it down. I was thinking when you were thinking about the mansplaining and all, going on and these people were at these shows. They knew the first show I played at CBGB's. It was T.S.O.L, the Bad Brains, and the Beastie Boy, and it was not sold out. It was like it was pretty empty, on a Tuesday night or whatever the hell it was. There weren't a lot of people there at that.
What year was that? Do you know?
81. It's probably 80,
yeah.
81. And then, and then when Nancy was talking about the phone call, going on tour, you ran into strange people, like whacked out people that like punk rock. And I ran into this guy whose father was one of the head guys at AT&T. Now this is before, so there's not computers and not cell phones. You're going to pay phones. So he gave me a phone number, and when you dialed a phone number, a computer would come on. And it would say access code, which was already trippy that you're talking to a computer. And then you'd say 765271. And the computer go, did you say 765272? Go, no, I said 765271. And then the computer go, access granted, right? So, and then you could call and just talk for however long you wanted. And so at this show at CBGB's, there used to be a payphone in the back. I don't know if there was a payphone in the back. So before T.S.O.L went on stage, I called this guy, Larry Hardy, he owns a record label now. I can't remember the label, but anyway, so I called Larry. Larry was just a kid in high school, right? I go, you want to listen to the show? And just left the phone off the hook. And, it's a 45-minute long call from the back, from CBGB's to California. So he could listen to the show, so.
I used to do the same thing. I had a fake credit card and we used to rehearse at the Mask. And so I would call my friend Clive Langer from Deaf School. I was like, do you want to hear us rehearse? He's like, yeah. So I would just like let him listen to us rehearse for like an hour.
Yeah.
From England to LA. It was hilarious.
It's funny you talk about stuff, and then also, it's not just the same it's the same all across. I meet so many people that were supposedly where they were at, that it's like, hey, if you were there, I wouldn't have had to live at my mother's. You were not there.
Yeah. I mean, some of the early punk shows, like The Damned at the Starwood or something, people like, oh, I was there. It's like, oh yeah, there was like 10 people there. How's that possible?
I saw Susie and the Banshees, and I don't even talk about this shit because they sound like there's some old person going off on the. But I saw Susie and the Banshees at the Whiskey, and there were not enough people there for the second show. So they were doing 2 shows, but there weren't enough people there for the second show. So they just let everybody at the first show stay if they felt like it. There were so many shows like that, or the stuff that happened. I get guys all the time writing stuff. It's like, dude, no, man, no, you're. And I don't even at the time. I just let them go. I don't give a fuck.
I remember those shows at the Whiskey when they used to clear the house or not, depending on how well attended it was.
Right.
Because we opened up for Elvis Costello, and they said, "You're out of here," But,
so much of that. Yes.
Jack, I have a question. I hate to fuck up the flow of things here, but I'm curious about the Jesuit spiritual advisor. Like, I want to know this relationship.
Wasn't Jerry Brown, was it?
No. He was actually, the Jesuits are, I found it. I'm not religious in any way. I just was learning. I'm just reading. I just wanted to know. And somebody said, hey, you should go talk to one of the Jesuits. And because with those guys, you can say, hey, I don't believe in an afterlife. They go, I don't either. They're actually pretty solid. And I was checked out the Greek Orthodox for a while too. I was just looking, searching, learning, it's just, so I would go and visit with this guy. And it was the way I even got a hold of him is I like this priest, Anthony DeMello, and I wanted to talk to him, but he had died. But I really liked the way he thought. The first time I looked up Anthony DeMello, there was a warning on the internet, and it said to proceed further could put your soul in danger. Oh my God, I couldn't click the fucking button fast. I clicked on porn slower than I've clicked on that. I was clicking that button, and all of a sudden, here's the thoughts of this priest, this Indian priest. And I thought, oh my God, I want to talk to this guy. And then he was dead. So I actually called New York. I called these guys and said, hey, I know he's dead, but does anyone else think like that out there that I could speak with? And they're like, what's this call about? They didn't have any, they were shocked that just some random dude would be wanting to know what they were thinking, and anyway, so they hooked me up with a Jesuit out here, and then I just go meet him every week. And we just read and study. And he said one of the coolest things to me, I'm a slow learner. And I was tearing apart the New Testament at the time, and I'm an atheist, and I was tearing apart the New Testament at the time. And I asked Brother Charlie, I said, what's the best translation? Because I'm thinking I'm going to learn Aramaic. I'm going to, whatever I got to do. And he looked at me and he said, Jack, it's such a shame that you're that hung up on the words. And it was really a really cool thing for him to say to me, to let it go, to let the words all go. And anyway, so to answer your question.
You can tell that to T.S.O.L fans now.
Yeah, well.
Well, Alejandro could have translated it in Latin for you.
Yeah. Well, I was actually
That's what told you to let it go. They're the language sticklers out of everybody.
Right. And that was what was so cool that he said that, because I was hunting him down for translations and and learning Latin at the time also, and just kind of, anyway, yeah, it was. All right.
Well, I suppose after you find every possible way to endanger your soul, what else is left?
Ooh, that was pretty profound. I can say.
It was.
Yeah.
It's getting too serious.
I better get into some heretical ideas here.
You realize that what you're trying to protect didn't even exist. That's when you
Right.
really start freaking out.
Nancy, you went to Catholic school, right? Nancy,
Yeah.
you went
I
to
did
Catholic
too.
school.
Yep.
And my dad was a Marine, so
Yeah.
that's probably why I loved
Wow.
like reading.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're sisters.
Yes. You know, and it's great to talk to you two, and Jesse and Jen too will be able to chime in. How you had to communicate back in the 80s. I mean,
Smoke signals mostly.
I feel like it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
But one of the best movies I think that showcases that is Another State of Mind with Social Distortion. And they actually filmed their first tour. And I don't know if either one of you have ever seen that, but it's glorious. So I think I would tell kids these days, just watch that, because that's exactly what happens. You
Right,
go on tour.
And Sean Stern, who was the Better Youth organization, was
Yep.
a friend of mine, just because what would happen, like, you know, bands like Jax and others would come in, they'd be like, well, you need to talk to this guy, Sean Stern, out in California. So Sean Stern and I were
Right.
like friends. We had never met, you know, but like I would
Yeah.
call him up in the middle of the night because the time difference or whatever. And we'd have, you know, we'd talk about bands and music and people. And we wanted to replicate his BYO model in Philadelphia, you know, and we got his blessing. And that was the first Buff Hall show, which was, you know, Minor Threat, SSD, Agnostic Front, Death, and Flag, which was like, you know, probably one of the, you know, I will, you know, in my humble opinion, one of the best hardcore shows of all time, one of the craziest, but like
Were you
so
really
much
there?
energy in that room.
Wait a
Are you
minute.
sure?
Yeah. Wait a minute. I don't remember.
Are you
this.
sure you were
Yeah.
there?
Are you sure
The
you were
good
there,
thing-
Nancy? I don't believe
I'm
you.
checking
Good thing
Google
about
right now.
my shows is that I always ended up in photos, you know, for some reason. And so there are photos of me at that show, you know.
Zelig,
So,
yeah.
You know, like when people say, like, you know,
Were you
saw the
really
band.
there?
Yeah, were you really there? Well, look right underneath Al's elbow. And, you know, we did that show, you know, we were Philly BYO and that was our show, you know, but, and it was a crazy night and we're lucky someone wasn't killed, but, you know, Ian almost was because he got hit by a car that night, a stolen car. And, you know, it was nuts, but it hyped the energy up in the room. And you know, I've never seen so many bands, you know, with their A game out. You know?
Yeah.
Let's get
Nancy,
down
I'm
did
to
you
always
ever
a-
come to Los Angeles? Were you ever in LA?
I came to LA for SSD's first tour. That was my first time there. And that was, you know, like Al, he drove straight across country in a van with like 11 people, didn't stop anywhere, like, you know, had to make good time, you know, and I flew out with Christina Lease, McCarthy, who's an actress, lives in Hollywood now. She was on 90210 and Child's Play. She and I flew out together and then met up with the band there. And then they played Santa Monica Civic Center. And then we drove up the coast and played on Broadway and Ruthie's. And, you know, so that was really, you know, a lot of fun, you know, big, because the LA scene was huge, you know, and I didn't know it was, I mean, I don't know if I knew it was as big, but I remember being really surprised at that Santa Monica Civic Center, like, whoa, like all these people are here. Like we play with GBH and, you know, it was intense. So
We saw some good bands at the Santa Monica Civic. I mean,
yeah,
like
they had some
Queen
good
and
shows.
Bowie and really great shows at the Santa Monica Civic.
And then Al and I used to go out to California and Las Vegas, you know, pretty regularly, like once a year. That was our vacation. And that's when one time we went out and Jack's band, the Joy Killer, was playing with Pennywise. And, you know, I was like, oh, well, we got to go to see that. You know, we saw Frank Sinatra and then the Joy Killer, you know. So it was, you know, it was really fun. I love the West Coast. I haven't been out there in years, but
Did you ever go to like the Mabuhay Gardens or the San Francisco scene? That was a great scene as well, like with the Nuns and the Avengers and
Yeah, we just, Al
yeah,
booked,
both of
Al
them
booked the
opened.
tour right up the coast, and then that was 2 weeks, and because he was working and he had to be back, so it was like boom, 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 and drive back.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's get down to
Oh.
brass tacks. Outside of
Yeah.
T.S.O.L, who are both of your other favorite bands in the scene? Now, be honest.
You want to go first, Jack, or?
Oh, I don't. I mean, yeah,
Do you actually like any of them?
Yeah, come on, dish some dirt.
No, I love the Weirdos. I thought the Weirdos were great.
Me too.
They were great.
And the Dills.
Not the Dills so much. The Weirdos I liked, and I liked the Germs. So that it was great seeing them. I don't. There were so many. It's like in some like the Crowd for down here. The Crowd. I love the Crowd. Like they were great. They were like good looking surfer guys wearing day glow. I mean, if they would have came out in the 90s, they would have been, they wouldn't be talking to me anymore. You know what I mean? Millionaire guy. I love my favorite thing was parties. Like I really like I like playing in houses.
Wait, Jack, were you at the, tell the truth, were you at the July 4th show that Backstage Pass opened for the Weirdos and the Weirdos torched the flag?
Oh, no, I was not. No.
They almost stopped having punk bands at the Starwood after that.
Yeah, I liked houses. I'm a fucking surfer. I'm a surfer that loved Philly soul. That's what I love. It's like Barry White. Like I would get guys in the car with me, and I would have these punks in the car with me, and I'd say, "Oh no, we're going to be listening to the Love Unlimited Orchestra, we're going to the shows." That's the kind of shit I grew up on, and I like just being in party. I liked houses. I still love houses.
Yeah, I remember going to see the Runaways at Fast Freddy's house in Torrance.
Yeah, that's what I like.
That was epic.
I hear guys, I get on stage, some of these punk shows, these guys are crying because the monitors aren't good. Monitors?
What monitors?
Just kick them off the stage, right?
Security, and they want a barricade. It's like, look, man, my teeth are missing from getting the mic shoved in my mouth. I like to just feel that. I like to have them right here and me right there, and that close thing. And I'm also like a total shy, body conscious, self-conscious. The closer I have people to me, then they can't see me. I don't want them seeing me move on stage. I don't want them seeing my legs move. You know what I mean? I want to be up close and tight. And in a house, I remember we played a party one time. It was T.S.O.L, Agent Orange, the Vandals, Adolescents, all in a house.
All the classics.
And there were no cars. There were no fucking cars out front. It was all bicycles on the lawn. That's what I liked. That was my favorite. I tried to arrange a tour. I tried to get a sponsor, Hurley. I tried to get Hurley, the clothing company. I said, hey, sponsor us to do houses and fuck clubs.
Yeah.
We'll just put houses all across the United States to go, the insurance implications or
Nancy, what were some of your favorite bands?
My favorite band was the Bad Brains. Like the first time I remember people telling me, like, when you see the Bad Brains, your life will change. And you can see there's a photograph of me at the show where
you were there
on my face,
Photoshop,
just pure awe. Like I was in the back. I remember there were, two little kids there that I just didn't want them to get crunched or anything. And I heard the opening, notes of Big Takeover, and I was like right up front. And I was like so blown away with their musicality and their energy and their song structure. Like it was just mind blowing to me how great they were when they were on. And I vowed that night, I was like, I will see this band play anywhere in a tri-state area region. And that's a promise I kept. And I went to see them so many times in Jersey and New York. And then when they started getting into, Rastafarian stuff and becoming homophobic and misogynistic. And it was like, I was super conflicted and I didn't know what to do. And, which was good because it makes you think, like,
Right.
it's a learning, it becomes a learning experience. And so that was really great. So they were probably number one. I loved Minor Threat. And of course I loved SSD Control. When I bought that record, that SSD Control record, I just felt like somebody pushed me across the room and I was like,
You said, I'm going to marry that, Al.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because there was a number on there. It said, SSD wants to play your city and there's a phone number. So I called it and I ended up talking to Al on the phone for like 4 hours, which was really expensive. And then, but I didn't know who I was talking to at the time. After I got off the phone, then I looked on the insert to see what I was like, oh, that guy, he's a little scary looking, like I did, I didn't really know who I was, talking to. And then of course, I loved T.S.O.L. Like I still listen to, that record, when you just, you have Sounds of Silence and Code Blue, like one boom, boom, right after the other. Every single song on that record is great to me. It's, it's just so, you guys are in my top 5 and, I liked Black Flag and those were like my hardcore bands that I like. My more punk bands were the Clash. Really, the Clash opened my eyes to, the world, the Avengers, Vice Squad, X-Ray Specs. I loved all the Blitz, all those bands.
Yeah.
One of my favorite shows pre-punk was Dr. Feelgood at the Starwood. I was like, what? When I saw Wilco Johnson play, I was just like, what did I just see? His guitar playing, and then it just, then punk started happening. And, but just seeing them to start with kind of blew my mind.
I'm a huge Susie and the Banshees fan, so I need to know, Jack, how was that show? And was it the original band or the second edition, which is my favorite?
They had a great guitar player. Whoa.
Yeah, it was Budgie and Magooch and I can't even think the other guy. Anyway, they were great. It was great. Yeah, and I love the Bad Brains too. I thought that was the politics got very rough.
Very rough.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. Like I've been hit up about being a misogynist before, which to me is so.
But look at you now.
I know, but what I laugh about, I think about it, is like, because I've always been a fan of strong women. It's like I never even thought about it.
Sounds like you raised a couple.
Right. I never looked at Nancy and said that's a woman. You know what I mean? Like there was never anything other than equal ever. And
that's one thing, like when I say like, oh, I hung out with Jack that night and they're like, oh, he was what happened, and I was like, that dude was like one of the most respectful guys I ever met in my life, to this day, like you were awesome, I never felt like, like, oh, was it scary? Like, no, you were totally respectful to me as a human being and as a woman, it was.
Nancy, are you going to write another book?
The first one's still a top seller. Let's
relax.
Get away, it's hot.
Calm down.
Elizabeth has that.
You can't have 2 number 1s.
Well, so
yeah, you can.
When Al was having, a lot of surgery, back surgery and stuff, and after GE, like Al had only really worked for General Electric and they treated him like crap. And he was like a martyr for that company for years. And, he was really depressed, and I was like, dude, like you can't be depressed because you impacted so many people's lives in a really positive way. And I don't think he believed that. So I created the SSD Control Instagram. And I wanted it to be authentic since I'm not a member of the band. So I only posted stories about the band, either the band members telling them or other people talking about the band. And people loved it. People went crazy. So we got a book deal to do a photo essay book with Phil and Flash, who took a lot of photos of SSD Control. And so that's the next book.
Wow.
So yeah, but that's we've got the hardest part of that has been getting good scans from Phil. So which once COVID happened, then people haven't we haven't been able to go to Chicago. He's in Chicago, and we've got to get those. But the book that I wrote originally was How Punk Rock Made Me a Better Teacher, and it was the punk rock part, and then it was a bunch of stories about my students and how I used punk rock to reach them. And I got an agent right away, but publishers either like the punk rock story or the teacher story. So they didn't like them together. So I just pulled off the punk rock and I did that, but I still have, the teacher story part of it. And
I
so
think that should be a movie.
Yeah. It's funny, like I had a Bosnian student who was a victim of genocide, who was ready to drop out of school. And I saw him running, playing soccer, and I convinced him to go for track, and he, get his grades up and everything. And he had, this crazy story that like I saw The Blind Side. I was like, his story was so compelling that I wrote Eugene Robinson, I don't know if you know Eugene, from Oxbow, but he works for Aussie Media, and he asked me to, write some true story articles. So I did the Dead Kennedys bomb show. And then I wrote about this kid, and it was shared, not liked, shared 225,000 times internationally.
Wow.
So I know it's a compelling story. So, I'd like to put that book out, but I also, what I worry about is what they call virtue signaling, like, oh, look at me, I want to tell my kid's story with kind of not like without a focus on me. I'm not real sure how to make that work, so that's that
maybe you need a spiritual guide.
Yes, I might need a spiritual guide. Yeah. But I loved working with Ian from Bazillion Books so much. And
that is my favorite.
What a great guy, and like so brilliant and so smart, And I asked him this past week, I said, I wrote a teacher book, I go, would you be interested in, I said, you want to do my teacher book? And he was like, well, if it's just an idea and you can wait a year, yeah, and I was like, well, me, it's already written, So he's like, yeah, well, if you can wait till 2022, so maybe we'll.
And then you can come to Book Soup and do a book tour.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing. Like I saved up a lot of money because I wanted to have, a huge party when my book came out in at least Boston, New York, and Philadelphia. Like I just wanted to have like the high school reunion that we all wished we really had, and then COVID happened. So I'm really hoping that I get to do, something like I just wanted to have a big throwdown, and I hope that I get to do it,
Jack, we were so lucky to be able to go to Book Soup that night. That was one of the last things that I went to. When Crime and Punishment came out.
Yeah, I like that, and book parties are a blast. That's my favorite. I love it. I've had a couple of good book parties. We had one on a riverboat one time, and it was great. I mean, just 1,000 people trying to get on this damn riverboat, and
wow.
I just sat outside because I couldn't get on the boat, so I just sat outside and signed books for like 4 hours, and it was great. And, I paid for the boat, I paid for all the bands.
Yeah, I just really want to, I just want to see everybody again and celebrate, like, one last time before I leave this realm, So I hope we get to do it.
Do you want to?
Well. Can I be your costume designer?
Yes, please.
Nancy?
Yes, please.
I got the best book review ever the other day. The kid gave it to me. I'm trying to figure out how to read this without it up. I can't really go. He was talking about this book I wrote. All right, let me just okay. I have to leave names out. After reading so-and-so, I decided to attend my first recovery meeting ever. So the kids like going in recovery. So thank you for shedding light. You've always been a huge influence on me as far as music goes. And apparently you fucked my mom back in the 80s. So I hope both thought that was real cool too. That's the best blurb ever.
Love that.
My nephew's in a band called Kill Radio. He said he met you at, I guess it was a Rock to Recovery or one of those things.
Oh, yeah.
He's pretty involved in all that. He works for that, and he said you were a nice person. I said, oh, you must be talking about somebody different. In his book, he says he's a demon.
Yeah, and look at some of that stuff, man, for all those punk movies, and I know Nancy, you get these guys making these punk rock movies, and what do you want? Which Jack do you want? Is that what you and that's what they're looking for. They're looking for some shitty story about me being an asshole. It's like, yeah, I'm going to give it to you. Give me the money and I'll give it to you. It's like, and so they come and they pay me money, and except for the Dam. Now the Dam documentary, I was legit.
That is my favorite.
But a lot
I
of
love
it,
that.
they want sensationalism. That's what they want. They want some bullshit story of you being a fucking asshole. Nobody wants to hear people getting along. Everything's going great. There's no story there.
Yeah, going to see Jesuits and stuff.
Right.
Like,
they don't want to hear.
They don't want that.
They want to hear trouble. That's what they want. And I give it.
Nancy and Jack, can you do a little commercial for Metal Priestesses Podcast? You start, Nancy. Just say, hi, I'm Nancy Barile, and I wrote blah, 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 and I want to, please listen to Metal Priestesses Podcast, and then we'll have Jack do it.
All right, let me see if I cannot screw
Now,
this
wait,
up.
are we asking them please to, or you are listening to?
Yeah, in your case, you just say, you better listen.
Subscribe, whatever comes to your mind.
Better listen.
Okay.
Nancy, start.
Okay, ready? Yeah, I'm Nancy Barile, and I wrote a book called I'm Not Holding Your Coat. Please listen to Metal Priestess Podcast. Subscribe to it where all podcasts live, and you will not be disappointed.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Your turn, Jack.
Yes,
Good
I'm
luck.
Jack.
Start over.
All right, again? All right, ready? I'm Jack Grisham from T.S.O.L, and I am not the misogynist bastard that you might think I am. And I say, why don't you listen to Metal Priestess Podcast? Go join in, log in, do whatever the hell you do. All right, how's that?
Excellent.
Perfect.
Wow.
Thank
I
you.
have to jump off. I'm sad about this, but I had such a great time talking to both of you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank
You're
you
great.
so much.